I saw some of the closest people to me have to take care of their children who were handicapped. I saw my family take care of my grandparents when they were sick and different family members. So all that is really baked into who I am, to where it almost comes naturally.
In a world full of excuses, there's still men who show up for their family, for the community, for the calling. Today's guest didn't just build a business, he built a life people can depend on. Welcome back to the Purpose Pursuit Podcast, where we talk about building a life you're proud of, mentally, spiritually, financially, and physically. Today's episode is about responsibility, consistency, and being the man that people can rely on. If you're building something, a business, a family, yourself, this one's for you. Subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, and let's get into it. Certainly appreciate you coming in today, and I've been looking forward to this conversation and just learn a little bit more about you, how you have gotten into the community, what's got you into your business, and just what's made you into the man that you are. So kind of really think that, your story, your message will help somebody, and just certainly appreciate you coming in and blessing us with your presence today.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you for allowing me to be here with you today, and it's my pleasure to be here talking to you.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started, and just kind of kick things off with some light questions or whatnot, just to learn a little bit about you and how you got into, the things that you do. All right, so you're from Memphis through and through, Westwood. Growing up in that environment, take us back. What did that upbringing teach you about early life?
Growing up in Westwood taught me a lot of good things. Taught me, for one, that life is not going to always be easy. That was one of the main things I learned. I saw the good, I saw bad, I saw ugly. But it taught me that, if you want to get to a certain place, you got to work hard. But it also taught me that if you make some bad decisions, you can end up where you don't want to be. So again, I saw a lot of good stuff, a lot of bad stuff, but mainly it taught me that I need to lock in and focus if I want to accomplish my goals in life and get to where I want to be.
You started HVAC in 11th grade. That's not common. What made you lock in on a trade so early?
I was weighing my options. I was on, at the time, what they called the dual path, to where you could take the trade route, or you could go the academic route. I was a pretty good student academically, but once I got into HVAC class and started seeing how fast you can start to make money with a trade, and how it wasn't a lot of uncertainty. How there was going to always be a demand, and I'll always have a job. So I got to seeing that type stuff, and seeing that you could make a really good living with it, and I got to weigh in my options, because before then I was thinking about being a school teacher or an engineer, but I wasn't certain. But by the time I got in HVAC class, I started really liking it, and I was like, if I do this, I'm almost certain that I'll be able to have a good career that would take care of me and my family, in the future.
So, like, what did you always have an interest in, just in technical things, or were you just curious about HVAC, or like who introduced you to HVAC?
Good question. So it was the HVAC teacher. So at Westwood, one day they called us into the auditorium, and in the community, we had Southwest Career and Technology Center, aka Southwest Votech.
Okay.
So all the different trade instructors came around and introduced their trades to the students, and they were kind of, trying to recruit people into their class. At the time, I was in the broadcasting program in Memphis City Schools, so I was already in something that I liked it, and I was doing pretty good in broadcasting. I started that in 10th grade. But the way I got pulled into HVAC is the instructor for HVAC, when it was his time to give his pitch, he said, I'm not going to stand up here and talk for a long time. I'm not going to say this and that. I'll just tell you this. I made $10,000 in one weekend changing some air conditioners.
That's all it took.
I was like, let me try that out. So that's how I ended up signing up for the class. And once I got into it, I fell in love with it, man, in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it was on from there.
I think that's pretty cool. You know, as soon as you said Southwest Votech, I thought about my father. He taught at Southwest Votech for the longest.
Oh,
Yeah. He for the longest. He was.
Thanks.
Yeah, he taught diesel mechanics there. It helped so many kids, you know, go on to get into their profession. And so I think, you know, obviously you got the university path, and then you got the technical path to what you mentioned. But you know, I personally think that having a skill early on, you know, kind of sets you up to kind of really get into your career. Because if you business savvy, you can obviously like get into that technical skill, learn it, and then you can branch off and start doing your things on the side, which ultimately turns into a business. And that's literally how a lot of people do it. So I just thought that was ironic, man. You know, you said Southwest Votech. That's why I immediately went back to my dad, how he helped a lot of kids that was in diesel mechanics. And then to hear that, you know, Southwest Votech had a, you know, impression on you too. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Your dad was one of the favorites out there, man. I remember him. He was there when I came through.
Really?
Yeah, he was there when I came through, man. His class was right next to my class.
Yeah.
So Doc Holliday, who was my teacher, he passed a few years ago, but great instructor. But yeah, your dad was one of the coolest guys, man.
Yeah.
So,
Shout out to Pops.
shout out to Mr. Bats.
Shout out to Pops. Making an impact. Southwest Votech. Shout out to Southwest Votech. So all right, I think that's pretty cool, man. A lot of people take years to find direction, but you found yours young. Do you feel like that gave you an advantage?
It yeah, I think it did give me an advantage. A lot of what you just said, you know, since I found out that I really liked what I was doing while I was still in high school, I didn't have to go through some of the phases that a lot of people go through. You know, oftentimes people will go to college and, in a sense, waste years. I guess you can argue if it was a waste or not, but I'll say they're still searching. You know, people will go to college and spend time, spend money pursuing a certain thing, and then they realize, you know what, this is not going to work for me. I don't like that. So again, like you alluded to a while ago, by me starting at a young age and discovering at a young age that I really liked that, I was like, okay, and I'm 17 years old now, or 16, or whatever it was. You know, by the time I get out of here, 2 years instead of, you know, going to a 4-year school, I go to a 2-year, you know, school and continue this, or I can go directly somewhere. And, you know, by the time that I would have been finishing a university, I would have just been graduating from university. I can already be on a job and already, you know, be there for 2 years, and I've had raises and have experience. So that's kind of exactly how it went. So it definitely gave me an advantage. And it was a blessing, man, to really know that that's what I wanted and not have to switch up.
You know, it's funny you talk a little bit about the fact that you went into that trade and you came out sort of ahead of everybody else who sort of went to university. But I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, I went to a 4-year university. It took me, I probably graduated in maybe 4 or 5 years. And after that, you know, it was like, okay, well, what do I do after that? And then, you know, I came out not making much money at all. I didn't get right into a career right away. So I had to figure it out. So it's like, not only did I spend 4 or 5 years in college, and I'm not knocking college.
No knock against college.
No knock against college. Everybody has to go their path. But I am an advocate for skills, especially a high-paying skill.
Right.
So I am an advocate for that. But, you know, just going to college, man, I got my degree and got out of college and didn't really necessarily know what direction I was going to go in.
Right.
And so it's like, so you got the 4 years and you got another 2 years trying to figure out what you're going to do. It's 6 years of your life. I mean, shoot, you know, versus yours, you're 2 to 3 years, you're already making paper.
Right. Right.
You are and probably not even in much debt.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I had some debt, but
in comparison to university.
Yeah, probably not compared to, you're right.
So a key word, not much in comparison. But so it's like, fortunately for me, I had a scholarship, so, you know, I didn't have any debt coming out. But there's countless of kids that goes to school, take out loans, they get out of school, kind of in my situation where I didn't know what I wanted to do. and they finally do something. They working somewhere and not paying much, but all they doing is paying off school loans.
Right.
So they paying off school loans for the next 10 years. So you go to school for 4 or 5. No knock on college now. No knock on college. You go to school for 4 or 5 years, then you get loans. Then you got to pay these loans back for the next 10 years. So it's almost like a setup in my mind.
Right.
But this is what I do because I say no knock against university. For any kid that is in university, I always encourage them to make sure that they do some type of internship. That's what I didn't do, and that's kind of what my mistake was, that I didn't do an internship. So I always talk about doing an internship. Your junior year, senior year, or going into your senior year, or sophomore year, and then that way you got some experience and you kind of get an idea of what you want to do.
Right.
Absent of the internship, I think you setting yourself up to kind of be 2 or 3 years removed from college and not knowing what you're going to do. You went from student of the year to working in the field. That was a transition from learning to actually doing work one day. What was that transition like?
For me, it was, in some ways it was difficult. In some ways it was smooth. So because I did start in high school, I knew when I came out of school, I knew way more than what your typical student would know coming out of school. And I was blessed to have another thing is I was blessed to have a lot of good instructors. So when I was in high school, I really learned pretty much all the fundamentals. Like when I went to trade school, I could have tested out probably the first half because I already knew, most of that stuff. But then I doubled down on it and went through it again. So because of the education that I had coming out of school, it wasn't hard getting into the field and actually fixing air conditioners and troubleshooting. That part wasn't the hard part for me. But the part that I really needed to learn was the how the company that I worked for operated.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an adjustment, because in school they're telling you how to repair things and how to learn how an HVAC system works. They're not teaching you customer service. They're not teaching you how you're going to have to deal with dispatchers and all this other stuff. So that was a big transition for me, just learning and all the paperwork. It was a lot of paperwork. This type of stuff that you don't think about. You go to a job, one HVAC job, you have to fill out 5-6 different slips before you leave the job. It's like, man, like I'm here just to fix it. I don't want to be doing all this writing and stuff. I would imagine they have tablets mostly now. But so that was a big adjustment. And the main adjustment coming out of school was how hot it was, man. That's the one thing that I said literally out of my mouth. School couldn't replicate this. We had units in there again practicing on how to fix them and how to install them. I was ready for that part, but that heat in those attics, man, is different. I told myself before I actually had to deal with it, hey, this is going to be a piece of cake. We hoop outside in 100-degree weather. It's nothing. We out here all day long, and the older people saying, "Come in, get some water." Come like we do this. But once I got into those attics, man, I remember the first few days. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit. And then I was like, what? Don't quit. So I made it a day. I'm like, all right, make another day. And then I was like, okay, you made it a week. Like, see if you can do 2 weeks. By the time I kept, talking to myself, because I'm like, man, it's hot. Like, I'm going to quit. But by the time I did a whole month, I was like, okay, if you did one Memphis summer going through these attics, then you can keep on. But that was the biggest transition, those two things.
Yeah. So you're talking a lot about the business side, administrative side of it. Like, where did you have like a mentor? How did you find out about that? How did you learn about that part of the business?
So the company that I work, I learned. I'm a sponge, man. I'm always learning. Like whatever I go through, I'm trying to learn. So the company that I worked for was one of the top companies in the area at the time. They sent us to a lot of training. So I learned everything, a lot of what I needed from there. And the other thing is I learned directly from the customers, because you're going to customers' homes and everything. So you're seeing what makes customers happy. You're seeing what customers don't like. So one of the reasons I think that I've been successful as an entrepreneur now is because I remembered all those things that customers hated. And I said, if I ever work for myself, we ain't doing that. And I remembered all those things that customers loved, like they raved about. One of the small things like putting on shoe covers. Like to me as a technician, I never really thought it was a big deal, but we go into customers' homes and they'll say, thank you. I really appreciate that. So I said, if I ever start a business, want to make sure we wear shoe covers. So learning those things really helped me. Again, the training and just remembering what customers hated, what customers love, and the stuff that made the company that I worked for successful. So just emulating, what works, and not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Okay. There's a difference between knowing something and mastering it. When did you feel like you really became confident in your craft?
It's a good question. I was really I was really confident out the gate, simply because I studied like crazy. Like if you have heard people talk about Kobe and Mamba mentality and how Kobe worked, that's kind of how I was when it came to HVAC. Like, I was staying up every night. I unplugged my TV. I was a big Kobe fan. I unplugged my TV, missing the Lakers game because I studied and I wanted to really get it. So that was a big part of it. I knew from the books going in, but I'll say after about 3 or 4 summers, adding the actual experience to that, I was like, okay, I got it. And that's when I really feel like I mastered it, especially as a technician.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, I hadn't really done a lot of installations. I had done just a little on install. So later on, after I got my business, I started learning on that side. But the thing about it, you never stop learning, right? So it's you may learn one thing this year, and then they bring out new technology. So you have to learn more, when they bring that new technology out. But the simple answer is about 3-4 years in, I feel like, okay, this book knowledge is now combined with this physical hands-on experience, and I got it.
So what do you think separates a good technician, just from a average one?
Caring enough to master. I think the good technicians are the ones who want to master the craft. An average technician just wants a job. He's okay with knowing just enough. A good technician is the one who wants to master the basics. Again, I always go back to sports. I feel like when you master the fundamentals, they say don't use the word basics because it sounds, but when you master the fundamentals, then you can always build anything on top of the fundamentals. And that's what make the best technicians better than the people who are not so good. They care enough to master the small things.
Right. So what would you tell a young man that is kind of overlooking a trade right now?
You're doing yourself a disservice. I'll say don't overlook a trade flat out. I'll start there and just let them know that trades are very valuable because you're going to always have an opportunity for work. And not just an opportunity for work, but it's almost unlimited opportunity. Again, if you just want to be someone who wants a job and don't ever want to run your own business, then you have that opportunity. But if you want to be someone who can start and grow your own business, you have that opportunity. So being able to work with your hands it's a blessing, and knowing a trade is a blessing. And of course, the time we live in now with AI, a lot of people, unfortunately, right now are losing jobs because AI are taking their jobs. It's not going to be many AI robots out here fixing cars and doing plumbing and doing HVAC and all the other trades. So it's job security there, and it's money to be made there. It's almost limitless opportunities.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking the other day, a lot of the administrative tasks, a lot of the things that AI can do, they're going to be replacing people.
Right.
And to your point, the skills like HVAC or electrician or a plumber, etc. I think, man, down the road, those individuals are going to be making a lot of money because you can't replace it. You got AI replacing everything else, and then you're only going to have a few people who can do these types of roles. And so when you got that much demand for a limited supply of technicians or specialties in that, the sky's going to be the limit in turn. You know what? I need to go with HVAC, man.
I agree.
I need to get into electrical work right
I agree.
now. But no, AI, to your point, certainly will not, I don't think, replace plumbing, HVAC, electrical work, any type of carpentry work. I just don't see it, at least not in the near future.
Right. Not like
at least not in the near future. But certainly though, like, those other skill jobs or just jobs where you're using more of your brain. Not that HVAC doesn't use it, but that's the only thing you're using,
Mhm.
right? AI is doing it now. You can type something in and it'll create something and, like writers, right? You
Mhm.
got AI writing everything. What does that do for a writer? So that's something to think about. But certainly, to your point, if you overlooking a trade, don't overlook it.
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't overlook it at all. If I hadn't got into leadership work, that's probably what I would be doing. If I didn't go to school, I'd probably be doing some type of skill right now.
Mhm.
I don't know what it would be, but I'm really good with my hands. I've built computers, I've worked on cars, etc. But it would probably be something with my hands and with a skill that I know somebody can't take away from me.
Right.
Yeah. At some point, you made the transition from working for someone else to building your own company. What pushed you to make that move?
Um. So what pushed me to start my own company was the job or career path that I had in between there, and that was I was an HVAC instructor.
Mm.
So that was my dream job. When I was a student at Southwest, I asked my instructor then, I was like, "How much money are you making?" He gave me a round and about figure, and I was like, "Do you have to have a 4-year degree to do this?" He's like, "No, it was based on experience." And I knew already that my gift was teaching. It's one of my spiritual gifts that I had already known. So I became an HVAC instructor after some years in the field. After I became an HVAC instructor, I think I was probably like 23 when I started teaching HVAC. And probably 5 years into that, I'm still, kind of young. And I'm like, I never thought about what's next. Like, this was my dream job. I thought it was going to take me a long time to get here. But not only am I here, but I've been doing this for a while and I haven't even thought about what's next. But some of the red tape and some of the stuff that was happening to me as an instructor is really what kind of pushed me to start my own business. At first, it was just, I was enjoying being an instructor. I wanted to retire from teaching HVAC. I actually wanted to go back to Southwest. That was my dream. I wanted to go back to Southwest, teach HVAC, and retire. That was my dream. But again, I ended up getting hired at Vatterott College at the time as an instructor. But some years after I was working there, things started changing. The corporate side started kicking in, and they started, making it harder for me to actually teach. And that's what I was there for, to teach. And it was like, we want you to do this. They were focusing on retention and attrition, the dollars basically. And I saw that, so that kind of discouraged me. And not the people that I was working with, but again the higher ups in the company on the corporate side. So because of that, it frustrated me while I was an instructor. It got to the point to where I was depressed driving in to work. Like, man, this was my dream job and I hate it now. So I ended up getting my contractor's license, and I had just been doing work on the side, but the frustration of how they were changing things while I was teaching is really what pushed me to go full time in my business. And another thing too is having that freedom too. So while I was there, a part of the frustration was not having the freedom to leave when I need to leave. And I had a son, and I always said, no matter what, well, my wife and I, we had our first child, but I always said, no matter what, man, I want to be there for my children. And seeing how hard it was at that time to get off when I wanted to be off for something, I was like, you know what, man, my son is 3 right now. He don't go to school yet, but I don't want to be in a position to where I'm having to ask this guy who's not letting me out when I want to be out. I want to be in that position because I'm like, I'm going to quit. I know, like, I ain't missing. That was like for real, that's one of my things. Like, I ain't missing nothing for my son. Like, I ain't missing nothing. I'm going to be there. So it was like, I was asking, at that time, but I'm like, if my son ever has something like, hey man, can I go? And you like, I don't know. I'm probably going to get a write-up or get fired because I'm not missing it. So all of that, the frustration from all of that at the time, kind of pushed me towards, it's probably just best that you work for yourself. And then you won't have to worry about that. So
what was that transition like? Was it like you were doing stuff on the side, building your clientele, or was it, I'm stopping here, I'm just going to start fresh here? How was that transition?
I did. I started just doing it on the side. So after I got my license, my contractor's license with the state of Tennessee, I probably worked 2.5 years and slowly started building my clientele, doing it on the side. So I went ahead and created my business and created my website and started getting reviews and all that. And probably, I think, yeah, like 3 years in, I went ahead and walked away. And because I was frustrated, I almost went cold turkey. And it's good. That's why it's good to have, good people in your corner, wise people that you know.
Mm.
So one of my friends, he was like, "Hey man, when you gonna start your own business?" I'm like, "You know what? I'm so tired of working here. I'm about to start my business at the beginning of the year. I'm quitting at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to start my business." And he was like, "Are you ready?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready." He was like, "Do you have this lined up, and do you have that lined up?" I'm like, "Nah, I don't have that lined up." So then, he and I talked a few times. He was like, "This is my advice for you. Before you quit, make sure you line up these things. Do this, 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 this." And that was very helpful because I was about to quit out of frustration, and I probably would end up struggling a whole lot, in the beginning because I didn't have some business things lined up that I need to have lined up. So what I did is I took a little while and, like you said, built up my clientele, signed up with a home warranty company in the beginning just in case I needed, some extra help, and linked up with a contractor who needed some help, doing his jobs. So that is what kind of carried me there in the beginning.
So how important is it to have, a mentor? Essentially you were in the process of making an emotional decision, but you had a mentor to kind of reset that and put you back in your logic. How important is it to have, mentors or somebody in your corner that's kind of, somebody you can trust their word or whatnot and kind of steer you in the right direction? How important is that?
Man, it's so valuable. It's super important. I wouldn't be where I am today without having people that I can talk to who can listen to me and help keep me, on the right track. Because we all go through times in life where you can make an emotional decision. Like that's not even my default. Like I'm usually very I plan things, I think things out, but we all have times in life where your emotions can get the best of you, and you may do something out of bad judgment. So I think what we have to realize is God made us that way, right? God made us for community. Like He created the family, He created the church, He made us for community. So having those people, that community, whether it's a mentor or a family member or a friend, to help keep you from making a bad decision is very valuable. Because instead of me saying I made this decision and I had to pay this price for that decision, I'm here talking about how I thought about making that decision, but somebody guided me, and when I jumped out, I was ready.
Yeah.
So it kept me from having to pay for something that I wouldn't have had to pay for.
So what type of advice could you give to somebody who don't necessarily have those people in their corners? Because a lot of people, they're in a rut, but they don't have anybody to talk to. Having somebody to talk to, and not just anybody, but having somebody to talk to kind of, talk through things, what's your thought on this, and here's what I'm thinking. Those types of conversations, not everybody has that, but how does somebody kind of connect to somebody like that? Or where do they go for something like that?
A good place, at least the first place that comes to mind is a church, a good church. And in the good church, you can usually have somebody there who can pour into you and help lead you and guide you. But sometimes it's your community, sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's a coworker. The good thing is you wanna make sure that you're trying to, don't just go to anybody. I'll say that. So you want to try to find somebody who genuinely cares for you. Find somebody who is doing what you would like to do. Find somebody who has already achieved some of the things that you would like to achieve. They say, like, if you're the smartest person in the room, then that's not a good thing. So you want to find somebody who has already accomplished some of the things that you wish to accomplish, already on the level that you want to grow to, and then look at their character too, though. So don't just go by where they are and what they've done, but somebody of good character, like you said, because it's important that you can trust them. Mm-hmm. So because somebody, with a bad motive could take advantage of you or mislead you. But so I'll say, you have to kind of be intentional sometimes. It might be a networking group. It might be a Better Business Bureau. It might be a church. It may be your family. But it's not one particular place. I was blessed again to have, some good people in my church. Like my very first youth pastor, is the mentor who still is one of my mentors to these days. My pastor was a good mentor. My assistant pastor. So I was blessed, man, to have some some good people around me, and that's where I was I received some good people is from the church.
Okay. So you're and I was pretty impressed, just looking at the amount of reviews you have, and then you're talking about 4 or 5 stars, just down the board, just highly rated company. How did you get to the point where your company is so highly rated in terms of, your services that you provide? What did you do to build that reputation?
It goes back to what you mentioned earlier, focusing on the small things. Like when you ask the question, what does it take to make a good technician or a really good technician versus an average technician? It's the same thing. I was watching an interview, and I was watching a podcast, and they were comparing Chick-fil-A to McDonald's, and it was the CEO, not the CEO of Chick-fil-A, but one of the higher ups in Chick-fil-A, and they asked him, why is Chick-fil-A different? Why do they have a better reputation? And he said, just like any other restaurant can do all the stuff we do, it's not because we're better per se, but it's because we care about the small things. We just care. And I think that's what makes my company different. Like in my core, I care. Like some people care about what they can get. I care about the service that I'm providing. I've always been that way. I'm really big on customer service. I critique people's customer service too when I go to a restaurant. I care. Like I care about the small details. And that's how my company has a reputation, is because I'm not just going out saying, hey, let me make this transaction and get this money and go. I want to make sure that the customer is happy. Like that's one of my things I've always said. I want people to be happy when they give me their money to fix their air conditioner. And again, when I was working for the first company that I did work for, I saw the opposite of that. I saw what it looks like when a customer had buyer's remorse. One day I went to a customer's house, they opened the door and just exploded on me, a customer I had never met. But because they had purchased something from one of my employees at the company, they had buyer's remorse. And I was like, man, like, I don't want anybody who does business with me to ever feel like that. So I try to go, out of my way to make my customers satisfied, and when I do mess up, which I will mess up, my company is not going to be perfect like anybody else, but when we mess up, we try to take care of that. And that's how we have those reviews. It's really caring about the customer versus caring about what I can get from the customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think you're spot on. I think just creating that value, because it's many HVAC companies. It's many companies in general, but so everybody provides kind of the same thing. But I think to your point, what company will stand out? It's the company that provides value. And a lot of times customers just want to know that they're taken care of and they're cared for. And so there's a lot to be said about a company that cares about customers first and worry about the dollars later. Now, it's not saying that you just like lose out on dollars.
I want the
but
dollars.
You want the dollars, but it's like when you have a customer who values you, they will pay and they won't think twice or have, to your point, buyer's remorse. So, I think that's amazing, man, how you've built that reputation, that many reviews. I mean, that's not something that's easy to do.
It's not.
It's not. You got some people with 12. You got some people with 10. You got some people with a lot, and they're all 2s. But you got 4s and 5s, and you have 400 or 500 reviews. I mean, that's a lot of reviews in the time that you've been running your business. I think that's pretty impressive. And obviously, with your company, you've created that value. So, just big shout out to you in that, man. Just that's pretty impressive. I'm impressed by that, and and I know your customers appreciate you too.
Thank you. Can I add a couple of things there?
Sure.
It's really a lot more simple. Like, so one of the things in my industry that customers hate is being lied to. That's one of the things. Like, again, it's simple, but it's not. It's like a lot of the companies lie. Like, one of the lies in my industry is people will tell customers, you can't get that Freon. You can't get that Freon anymore, that refrigerant. R22, they stopped making it. Or they'll say, if you do get it, it's gonna cost you $900 for 1 pound of it. And then that customer calls around, just say, let me get a second opinion. And I come and I have it. And I say, no, you can still get it. I fixed their system with that same that same refrigerant that 2-3 companies just told them it's impossible to get, or it will cost $900 for 1 pound. I fix it, and they end up paying me $300-400 total for the job or whatever it is. Just by being honest, that's a huge thing, man. There's so many other things like where, and again, that it's small, but it's huge. Just not lying to customers, man. Like, and again, when you mess up, fixing it, owning up, owning up. A lot of people we know in business, you make a mistake, they'll say, I didn't do that. When I make a mistake, I say, okay, let me fix that. Let me fix that. So just the small things, man, go a long way.
Yeah.
When it comes to,
I think I got buyer's remorse right now. Just had the AC unit replaced for that very thing. That very thing, man. It's an old system. It's gonna be $1,000 here. You need to replace this, that, and the other. Yeah. I wish we had talked about this.
Yeah, we should.
I wish we had talked about this. All right. You became a minister at 18. At the same time, you were building your career. How did you balance calling and career that early?
Honestly, at the time, there wasn't really a focus on balancing anything. I was just living, man. I was just living. I knew that I loved the Lord. I knew that I loved the Bible, and I knew that I loved HVAC all at the same time. And I actually fell in love with both of them around the same time. I was 16 years old when I rededicated my life to Christ. I was 16 years old when I got into my very first HVAC class. Before then, I had never read anything regularly. I would, growing up through school, I'm a listener by nature. I still don't prefer reading. I learned by listening. But at the time, there were not HVAC audio books, and the Bible audio app was not popular. So I fell in love with the Bible and Jesus at around the same time that I fell in love with HVAC. In both of those books, I just read every day. So again, it never crossed my mind at the moment, that I need to balance one or the other. I was in love with both, and I was just walking in what I knew I loved, walking with what I knew I loved.
Yeah. Now, you're an assistant pastor and co-pastor. What does spiritual leadership mean for you as a man?
So providing spiritual leadership means being someone that the people under your leadership can come to and trust and learn from and lean on. So one of the first things, of course, as a Christian is Bible teaching. So it means that I need to study the Bible. I need to show myself approved so that when people come, and I don't know everything about the Bible. I don't know all, but it's making sure that I'm prepared and I'm studying and learning so that for one, I can live it out and walk it out and be an example for others. But two, so that when people come to me with their questions, I can help them to walk through the questions that they may have. And then also, when people are just going through hard times and need help, I can point them to certain situations, again, from the Bible and use the Bible, use some of my life experiences, the life experiences of other believers, and show them how, if God delivered us through that, he'll deliver you through this also, just being there. So, but the core is teaching the truth and being trustworthy and being intentional about community, someone that people can come to, and I ain't gonna tell, not gonna tell the world about their things, but just building with each other, iron sharpening iron, and being someone that people can come to.
So was it, I think, I'm sure it probably was a calling, but when you started to hear that voice to go in that direction, was it something that you kind of hesitated with? Is it something you prayed about, or did you just dive right into that role?
Initially, let me see. I was praying, so that's how I found out. So again, I became a minister at 18. So we were going through a series in teenager church, youth church, whatever it was called at the time, youth ministry. And it was specifically talking about spiritual gifts. So for a couple of months, I had been, learning about spiritual gifts and praying and asking God, what is my gift? And he revealed it to me, that my gift is the gift of teaching. And later on in life, I learned that I have the gift of exhortation and encouragement as well. Um, when it happened, I didn't run from it. It was, again, I still had that zeal. I had that zeal, so it was like, send me, I'll go. A little crazy reference. But so that's kind of where I was with it. I was excited to find out, okay, this is what I'm put here to do. On one hand, it was some fear because it was so it was so strong. It was so strong when I first got that feeling. It was like, hey, if you don't do this, your life is not worth living. Like if this is what you're here for. If you don't do this, no reason for you to be here. So with that, like, came a little pressure in the beginning, but at the same time, I was young and I was, full of excitement, just like, okay, and it took me. I probably had more zeal. It was way more zeal than pressure, and of course, over the years, I set up under some good leadership and teaching, and kind of learned to get some structure to go along with the zeal that I had.
What were some of those churches, the names of those churches that you were kind of in when you kind of got into that role of ministry, and then, kind of where you are now?
So it's church that I've been at pretty much my whole life, but it's Dean Hill, Dean Hill Missionary Baptist. So ever since that's the church that I've gone to my whole life.
Okay.
And that's the one that I am one of the assistant pastors at now.
Good.
So yeah, that's where like I said.
So you definitely rooted and grounded in that church for sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Your message, be the light in real life, not church talk. What does that actually look like day to day?
Again, just living out the things that we talk about. The world is cold, man. The world is dark, and we can go around talking about all the bad things in the world. We can go around talking about what we saw on the news, but the reality is we're all living in this world, and we're all seeing the darkness. We're all experiencing the darkness, but God left us here in this so that we can be the light. One of my favorite scriptures is 1 Timothy 4:12. Don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but be an example for other believers in faith, life, love, speech, and purity. And I think that scripture kind of sums up what it looks like to be the light. You want to be an example. And again, it don't mean that you're going to live a perfect life. It don't mean that you're not going to sin. It don't mean that you're going to do everything right. But you want to be an example for others in how you go. Like, even when you sin, you can be an example that, okay, when you sin, what do you do? I repent, I confess my sin. I don't deny my sin and run away from my sin, or, hide and act like I didn't sin. So even when you fall and do wrong, you still want to be an example. Okay, how do I respond after this? And again, the world, man, it's people need to see the light. Jesus came into the world so that he can be the light. But when he went away, he left us so that we can take the light to the darkness. So we need to do that, man. So it looks like listening to somebody who is going through something without judging them because they're doing something that you would have never done. It looks like helping somebody who needs help. It looks like telling somebody, who is in the church what's right from wrong, even when they don't want to hear it. It looks like all of those things. So that's what being the light is, man. Just acknowledging that the world is dark. People are going through dark situations, and Jesus put us here so that we can encourage them.
Yeah.
And not just telling them it's going to be good all the time, but encouraging them again. Sometimes all you can do is pray for them and be the word.
Yeah. Have there been? I'm sure there has been, but have there been times where your faith was just like really tested?
Not. So I definitely can't say no, but it don't look like, it's not extreme, like in a way that a lot of people would say. Like, I've never had a moment in my life where I felt like God left me. I never had a moment in my life where I was angry with God. So not in that way, but I guess when I think of my faith being tested, I think of me just trying to live right, man. Like that's the test that comes to mind. Like like knowing what's right, what's wrong, or man, just some of the simple things. Studying when I want to go play basketball or when I want to play 2K with my son. Like to me, those are the tests that I really go through. I've never really subscribed to a lot of the views that other people have. So now I've had some really really hard times, but my fallback has always been. Like I said, growing up in Westwood, life gonna be hard.
Mm.
So I didn't have the unrealistic expectation that a lot of people had that because I'm a Christian or because I believe in God that it's going to be well now. So when I do go through the hard times, it's like that's expected. Not saying that I always respond well, but again, I don't crash out and I'm not mad. It's like that's expected. So it's usually like, God, what are you trying to teach me? Now, am I happy? No. like anybody else, I'm not happy when I go through the storms of life. So those are my tests, man. Really just trying to live right. One of my tests now is making sure that with all I have going on, that I'm really living for Jesus. I feel like my faith is being tested now. Like I don't want to get pulled too far this way and start focusing on business. I don't want to get pulled too far this way and let my main focus become raising a family. I don't want to be pulled too far this way and let my reputation be what I'm living about. So I'm going through the book by John Piper, Don't Waste Your Life, right now, and it's really testing and challenging me because sometimes when I look at things like, hey, if you go too far down this road, you can look up and say, I've wasted my life. Even though people think highly of me, even though I'm a minister in church, even though I think I'm a good husband and I think my children love their dad, you can do a whole lot of good things and still be off course because you can start to focus on the good things more so than the best thing. So that's the test that I'm kind of going through right now. And it's not, again, a test as far as saying, do I want to leave the faith or anything like that? I've never had anything that shook me like that. But my test is, can I be as faithful as I need to be in a time and in a place where the outside may be looking at me and saying, he's one of the most faithful people I know. But I'm looking and saying, am I doing all that I need to be doing? Do I have more? Is there more that, like the song said, there is more that I require? Is there more that God is requiring of me that I need to be seeking?
Yeah. You've been married for 15 years, raising 2 sons and helping care for your brother. That's real responsibility. How do you carry all that and still lead effectively?
I have a really good support system. I'm blessed to have a good support system. And I think that's a big part of it. So I have help, with those things. And the other thing is, it almost just comes. I'm not gonna say it comes naturally, but it feels natural. So like being a husband, being a father, it's something that I always wanted to do. Um, Taking care of my brother was not necessarily on my list, but I saw that model throughout life. I saw some of the closest people to me have to take care of their children who were handicapped. I saw my family take care of my grandparents when they were sick and different family members. So all that is really baked into who I am to where it almost comes naturally. And you ask like how do I balance that and leadership? I think all that really helps me to be a better leader. I think all that is really what makes me the leader that I am is, again, because I can empathize with people when they go through things because I'm going through some of the same things. So it's taken, like I said earlier, I learn from everything. So every situation I'm learning. And when I'm learning, I'm taking that knowledge and that experience and saying, okay, how could I take this and help somebody else? Or how could I take this and apply it in another situation? So it really just kind of all goes together for me.
Yeah. What has marriage taught you about commitment and growth?
Great question. Marriage has taught me that you have to be selfless. You have to be selfless. You said commitment and growth, right?
Yeah.
So growth don't happen when you're selfish, and so that's one of the main things that marriage has taught me. That man, you have to be selfless if you want to grow. Now, again, can I sit here and say that I'm always doing the selfless thing? Am I always, being unselfish? No. But what I know is, in order for me to grow, in order for my marriage to grow, I can't be all focused on me. I have to take care of the needs of my wife. I have to consider her feelings. I have to consider what she needs. I have to consider, because we're a team. So that's what marriage has taught me about growth. And on the commitment side is, again, I've always kind of been a person. I wouldn't say that marriage directly has taught me anything about commitment. I've always kind of been a person who liked to start what he finished. Of course, I'm blessed to have a wife who I think was on the same tip. When we came in, we talked about our our opinion and our feelings towards things like divorce and separation. We talked about, how we would handle a lot of things, and we're on the same page when it comes to commitments. But I wouldn't say that marriage has directly taught me anything specifically about commitment.
So it sounds like, now you said before, are you saying that you made sure y'all were aligned before you really committed to each other?
Yes, as much as possible. As much as possible.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, we talked about our values. So yes, we talked about our values with money. We talked about our values with family. That's one of the reasons I'm able to take care of my brother, right? My wife allows that. My house is her house, and my brother is there living with us. If she was against that, it would be total chaos, right? Because she would feel like she can't have what she have, or she can't, have what she want in her own house. So, but again, we talked about those things up front. I talked to her about my values of taking care of family. She talked to me about her values of taking care of family. So yeah, we were aligned on those major things. We talked about money. Going in, you hear one of the major things that lead to divorce is money. So we talked about, okay, how will we handle money? We talked about a lot of those things. We actually had a book that was helpful that I think my pastor or somebody recommended to us, that talked about all the things, a lot of the problems that people have in marriage and the differences. And we went through that book and we talked about those things and looked at what we were aligned on and what we were not aligned on. But the basic things we were aligned on.
So it sounds like y'all were pretty intentional about what y'all were looking for in a relationship, and y'all made sure there was alignment before y'all proceeded. Do you think that a lot of relationships in today's time kind of miss out on that and they just go with the feelings?
I think that's 100% true.
Yeah.
A lot of, and again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that my wife and I aligned perfectly, right? But again, all the main things we were there. But yes, to answer your question, I think a lot of people go with the feelings. They go with the butterflies in their stomach, and they go with all the outside things, and they don't think of hey, what's going to happen if his mother gets sick? What's going to happen if this right here happens, or what's going to happen if he loses his job, or who's, like, you see all these conversations about who's supposed to pay what and all this stuff. I think a lot of people don't iron out a lot of the things on the front end. It is a lot of times rushed. And then I think a lot of times people feel like love is just going to take care of it. There's a scripture that talks about how love covers all. I think people can even take like those type scriptures out of context. Like, oh, we love each other, it's going to work. But it's important to try to study and try to learn as much about your spouse as possible. The foundations, because you're going to change as you go on. But to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, I think when you said foundation was literally in my mind. Is that I've never seen a house built from the roof down. It's always built from the foundation up. So I think if people kind of treat relationships the same way, where because you got the man and a woman, right? You got her foundation, whatever ingredients were put in that foundation, and you got the man's foundation, whatever ingredients was put in there.
Right.
And then some way, somehow, you need to make sure that y'all got some similar ingredients in terms of that foundation, because even if it's a square foundation or oval foundation, it ain't gonna match,
Right.
right? So it's like you could skip that portion, you can start building, but when that bad boy burned down, you got to build it back from the foundation. And if that foundation ain't in sync,
Mm.
it ain't gonna work out. And so it's like when you was talking about foundation, man, that's the first thing that came. That was what was on my mind, is that people miss the foundational piece. They miss the values piece. They miss the core, the beliefs piece. And to
Right.
your point of how we gonna handle money, of what if something goes wrong, etc. And then even that, I talked about the ingredients. Well, I need to find out who poured these ingredients into this foundation.
Mm.
How do they handle
Mm.
conflict?
Right.
Are they the type of family who likes to party all night? You know what I
Right.
mean? Because this person grew up in that,
Right.
right? So it's like, so much of that is missed, I think, in relationships. But just to hear that you and your wife were intentional about making sure you was aligned, I think is really important. I think that's a lot of that's missed out in today's time. But I don't know how we got on that,
That's
but
good stuff. That's life. That's
yeah,
part of the life.
it is. It is. As a father, what kind of men are you intentionally raising your sons to become?
Man. God fearing men. Number one, I want them to know who Jesus Christ is. I want them to be honest men. God fearing, honest, family oriented, and leaders. Being leaders, that's big. I think probably the first prayer I prayed for my son when I first found out that my wife was pregnant with a boy was that he'll be a leader. It's always been big to me. Not following the crowd, being able to think on your own. So those are the things. I want them to be God fearing. I want them to be leaders. I want them to be caring men too. People who don't just live for themselves. So I try to be an example of that, of letting them know that God don't put us here just for us. He put us here to again spread light and shed light on others, to be a help to others. Sometimes it's going to be financial. Sometimes it's just encouraging. Sometimes it's just time. But so I want them to be those type of men.
Okay. You mentor young people and coach in the community. Why is it important to you to pour into others?
Because again, we were created for community. That's one thing, and the other thing is, like I said earlier, it's a dark world. So that's one way that I can be the light. When I say we should be the light in real life, and I just talk about it, that's one way that I could be the light. You never know what a child is going through, man. You never know what a child's situation is, what a person's situation is at home, or wherever they spend the majority of their time. And when you are with those people and you can be the light in their life, you can be the one that pour value into them and teach them really what God has taught you and what the Bible says about you. That's very helpful because sometimes they might not get it anywhere else. And me on the other hand, I was a recipient of that. Again, I talked about how my youth pastor had an impact on my life. How my pastor and assistant pastor had an impact on my life. But even before then, when I was very young, um, I had people. Doc Holliday. Like even though that was his job as an HVAC instructor, he poured into me. My teachers at Doubletree Elementary, they poured into me. I always say they were the very first people to really make me feel value. Before I was deep into church, I was going to church already, but it was my principal and my teachers at Doubletree, the words that they spoke and the things that they said, made me feel smart at a young age. And you can't tell me I'm not intelligent now because my teachers at Doubletree told me I'm okay. Like they poured that and locked that into me. And in the same way, we've all seen how when it's the opposite, that has a negative effect, right? When there's somebody saying you're going to be dumb, you ain't going to be anything, you're going to be just like this person who had a failed life or whatever it is, like that has a negative effect on them. So I'm always trying to be somewhere where I can again be the light and help build people up because that's what God put us here to do. If I can't do anything else, I can try to encourage you and build you up. So by being involved in the community, man, you get to meet people and make relationships. And some of the best times I've had is just seeing the child score their first basketball goal, man. Like, and and celebrating them. Like, I celebrate them. Like, I cheer for pretty much every other child louder than I cheer for my child. Because again, I know some of those people ain't got nobody cheering for them at home. When I was younger, I didn't have a lot of people cheering for me, you know, in the community. I was always told these statistics. I was told I was gonna be a thug. I was told I was gonna be this because I looked a certain way, because I came from a certain place. It was all what you can't do, what you can't do, what you can't do. But again, when I say nobody, I'm wrong when I say I didn't have anybody. I had some people, but it was a lot of people speaking negative. But those few people who were there building, being intentional in helping build me up, were very influential. So I benefited from that, and I want to pass that on to others. And again, besides, that's what God leave us here to do. That's the reason God don't call us up as soon as he save us.
Right.
Because he want us, like, once you get saved, now it's time to do work.
Yeah.
So he wants us to be that light in this dark world.
Okay. So we're going to do a little rapid fire.
Yes,
See
sir.
how fast you can come off with some answers, okay?
Okay.
All right. One word that defines you.
Real.
One lesson your father taught you.
You don't want to go to jail.
All right. One thing every man needs to understand.
Jesus is Lord.
What does success mean to you today?
Walking in my purpose. Doing what God would want me to do.
All right. What does being the light mean in one sentence?
Being the light means letting Jesus Christ shine through you in the way that you talk, in the way that you walk, in the way that you deal with others, in all areas of life.
Okay. All right. So you made it through that. You did pretty good, man.
Thank you.
You look kind of nervous before you started.
Thank you. I was nervous.
All right. So when it's all said and done, what do you want your life to stand for?
The number one thing is I want my life to reflect the grace of Jesus. That's the main thing. Now there's a lot of other things that fall under that. I want people to look at me and say he was a good role model in the community. I want people to look at me and say he was a person who overcame the odds and succeeded when a lot of people counted him out. I want people to look at me and say he's a good father, and I want people to look at me and say he's a good husband and a good family member. But if you were to wrap all that stuff up, that's being Christ-like, in my opinion. Like, that's me shining the light of Christ and showing the grace of Christ. So I'm saying good over and over and over, but knowing that literally, according to the Bible, none of us are good, including me. So by me living a life showing the grace of Christ, again, that's light, and that's encouragement for others by people saying, man, if he could do it, if he could be saved, I can be saved. If he could own a business and have great reviews, I can own a business and have great reviews. If he could, be faithful to a woman and be a good father, I could be faithful to one woman and be a good father. Not caring about where you come from, but knowing that you can do it with the help of God.
All right. If a man watching is feeling off track, what would you say to him?
I'll say, so first acknowledge that you're feeling off track. It's okay to acknowledge that, but don't stop there. What I've seen a lot of times in the experience when talking to men is people will feel a certain way and they acknowledge it and they stay there. And that can become an excuse for not moving forward because you've stopped at the problem. So if you're feeling off track, acknowledge that, but after that, seek a solution. Try to find out why you're off track. That may look like counseling. That may look like going to your brothers and sisters in Christ. It may look like, again, going to your friends, but try to figure out why you're feeling the way you're feeling. And then after that, seek a solution because you don't have to stay where you are.
Yeah. Well, man, I certainly appreciate you, coming in today, and certainly learned a lot. Learned a lot about how you got into HVAC, your walk with Christ, and then how you are with family, the type of man you are. It's like you're leading professionally, you're leading personally, and you're leading spiritually. It's like you're touching all three pillars in life right now as a man. And so I think you are an inspiration. I think that your message will resonate on all three levels. And certainly appreciate you coming in today, man, and having this conversation with me.
My pleasure, man. I appreciate you for having me, and I'm grateful for your platform, man, and keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it, bro. Appreciate it. If this episode spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs that message. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Because purpose isn't something you talk about. It's something you live. This is the Purpose Pursuit Podcast. Go pursue yours.